Well, welcome back to the Cottage Farmstead. My name is Nathan Vanette, and today we are going to be working on the irrigation out front. We're very excited about this, as lately with our garden, which is just around the front of the house, we've been having to hand water because we do not have a system in place. We were looking at different options. Overhead is the easiest and simplest to set up, especially if you do a wobbler. Basically, you just run a hose with the sprinkler attachment to it. But the problem is we have such strong winds here, it's not a practical way to utilize our water wisely because most of it would just be blown away. To put it into perspective, our average wind speed here is around 16.5 miles per hour. It's beautiful today. We don't have any wind, so we might get to tightening the plastic on the greenhouse today as well, which would be amazing. So we're going with drip irrigation for our gardens, and we will show you how to hook it up. So when configuring your drip system, you need a couple of tools. This is called a puncher. You put your drip line here, and it has this metal barb that when you do that, punches a hole to the diameter of the emitter here. Basically, that goes into your main line, and then this is a friction coupling which ties it to your drip line to help prevent leaks as much as possible. We have two types. This one has a valve, so if there are any particular beds where we might be pulling out a crop, we can turn that on without affecting the rest of the system. And then this is just a straight through without the valve for more of your permanent system. For cutting the poly tubing, you can use just a regular knife. Really any knife that you have would work. But one thing with the type of barb fittings that we have, you need a pretty straight cut. If it's not perfectly straight, it can be hard to get the barb in properly or to get this type of seal. So that's where I really like these cutters here. It's by Brass Cut or Craft. This is made for PVC, works great with the poly tubing, which is what we're using here today. So we'll get started here. Basically, as you can see, we have the orientation of these rows perpendicular to our main aisle. So we'll run our feed line or the header line parallel with the main aisle here, and the feeding lines or the drip lines will be alongside each of the plants there. So we have some galvanized stakes, which is to help keep that tubing in place, since as the drip line expands with the water and contracts, it can move around, and we don't want that to be a tripping hazard. So we'll go ahead, cut that to length, seal off the end, and go ahead and start punching holes. So with drip line, there are many different ones that you can get that regulate what type of PSI they can take, flow rate, and distance between emitters. Since we're doing beans, tomatoes obviously you want wider spacing. They have 18-inch for that. We're only dealing with 6-inch spacing here, which means we'll overlap a little bit, but we'll water the carrots that we have planted in between very well. One of the challenging things with irrigation that can be frustrating if you've worked with it at all is you have pipe thread and you have hose thread, and these two threads do not go well together at all. You can try to thread them together, which on the surface might look like they work well, but they'll end up leaking. So usually when you're dealing with piping, you have to go to pipe thread. So this will go with a barb that goes in here, probably to a female pipe thread. Then we'll have male pipe thread that goes and threads into that with a female hose thread, and that female hose thread is what we will screw onto the timer, because the timer has a male hose thread. So you have to make sure everything works in conjunction. It'll end up being, 4 inches long of attachments, but it's one of those things that is necessary with working with irrigation.
So early on in our garden planting, we were super excited about trying hugelkultur and using some of the rotting wood from our woods. And in the end, so far, we're both very glad that we only did 4 beds this way. It has been very tricky to wire hoe because of all the wood and twigs and such underneath. We've had more issues where we had gaps in the cardboard because of the mound that we had here, so we have more grass and weeds growing in these beds. And then now that we're putting the drip irrigation lines in, we're supposed to be stapling these down, and we keep hitting the logs underneath, so it's making it very tricky to put the drip irrigation in. So far we are not sold on the hugelkultur, at least in this garden setting. We nearly finished our drip irrigation in our vegetable terrace back there. We got all the line run and stapled down. We're short a couple of the connectors, and we also don't have the caps that we need for the end of each drip line. So we will be continuing this project later this evening if we're able to get the parts in time. If not, another day. We'll bring you along then.
And we're back. Rebecca's busy watering the flowers, which is quite a beautiful project there. And we are hopefully going to be able to finish up the drip irrigation today. We got a bunch more parts from the farm. There were some spare timers we had there, and then hopefully all the connections to get it hooked up to the timer. So as you can see, we got several different timers. These were different ones that haven't worked for different reasons. I'm hoping that one of these worked well. I actually found one of the screen interfaces that works, and the base that also should work. So we'll get this set up and dry fit in preparation for it. But we like to get our plumbing parts from Drip Depot. They seem to have everything we want, and in small enough quantities where you're not having to buy it in too large of quantities as other irrigation suppliers. But they have some of the more obscure pieces, such as this right here, which is female hose thread to male pipe thread. What that enables us to do is then go from, well, that one's too small, male pipe thread to this one right here, hose barb fitting. So that just screws on once I get started. There we go. That screws on just like that. Then we need a little nub of 3/4 inch, which goes on the barb here with a hose clamp. One thing I did not like as much were their hose clamps in particular, as they are metric instead of standard. What that means is our sockets that are for the drill do not fit on it. So just have to tighten up with the wrench. But once you have that on, then you can go with a 3/4 inch to a 1/2 inch adapter. So I should probably put the clamp on first. It's always easier to put the clamps on because when you put when you put the barb fittings in, it actually expands the pipe a little bit. This is much, much easier when it's warm outside. And if you have something hard to press up against, that can help as well. Once that is in, then that will fit our 1/2 inch pipe, and that will be the junction that we need to go from the timer with enough pipe to fit our flexible 1/2 inch line, which will be our header line. One thing that you also need when working with drip irrigation is some sort of pressure regulator. Different drip irrigation systems require different pressures. Ours is 10 psi, and that Drip Depot carries 10, 15, 25, 30, just about all the different increments you can think of. But basically the way this works, water comes through here from the timer, and as it builds up pressure, once there's back pressure, it self-regulates and has something that turns the water this way to 10 psi. That way you're not blowing off the end or causing compression issues with the line itself, which is important because these lines are particularly engineered for set psi. This would not work to just plug directly into our hose faucet, for instance, because our pressure tank is at 60 psi, so that would definitely cause the ends either to burst out or the line itself to burst. So, nifty little tool, doesn't take up a lot of room, and very inexpensive. With working with zip ties, you don't want to just fold it once. If you fold it once, it will leak. So I try to get short laps in at least 3, put the zip tie over it, and go ahead and cinch it pretty tight. You want it to feel like you're compressing it almost, and you can see how it bunches it together. And that greatly reduces the chance of it exploding out or actually leaking as well. So I got everything hooked up, so we're ready to try all this out. So that's going to be one of those areas of which I need to get the tubing in a little bit further and then re-cinch that down. I don't mind a leak there, those are easy to mitigate. We have even dripping. Another one there that needs to be tightened up. That is beautiful. That one is set. So I'll go to the next one. Which I know this one was also helter-skelter. I think both of them on this bed. Sure enough, you can see it was not pushed on long or far enough. Most of the time with these systems, you just have to foolproof it a couple of times. Check it the first couple of days. Make sure everything is tight. Since you want even pressure, you try to eliminate as many leaks as possible. For any leaks will greatly diminish the amount of pressure that the system's able to maintain. So I went ahead and fixed those leaks. It doesn't look like there are any leaks on any of the drip lines themselves. There is one over by the timer right up here. That's due to one of the rubber gaskets missing at one of the connection points. But I'll quick show you what the drip lines are looking like. It's very exciting. You can see good even moisture on each of the beds. What we love about this, it puts the moisture right where we need it. It will greatly diminish the amount of weeds that grow, especially on the aisleways, because here in South Carolina where we have warm summers, no moisture is going on those wood chips. So that means the chance of weeds growing is greatly diminished. Oh, this is so exciting. Plus this is a high efficiency irrigation method, very efficient for its water usage for your crops. So now I'll do the same thing over there, zip tie the ends right over there by Rebecca, and then we should be ready to go with the whole garden.
Well, good evening from Cottage Farmstead. I sat down to edit this video on drip irrigation and realized that we never actually filmed any sort of wrap-up for it, so that's what I'm here to show you. Behind me here you can see a few things have changed in the garden, and I'm planning on filming a garden tour this week, so I will talk more about that in another video. But you can also see that we have drip irrigation lines everywhere. So Farmer Nathan got the rest of the parts that we needed. He got it set up in the entire vegetable terrace. He's got it set up on both sides of the terrace into our herb garden. We haven't set it up in the rest of the herb garden yet, as we're still having to overhead water because we have seeds that we're waiting on germinating, but we do plan on setting up some more irrigation up here. It has been a huge time saver. There's been a few little kinks to work out, as a few things have leaked or missing a gasket here and there, the sort of things that pop up when using used plumbing supplies. But it's been a huge blessing to not have to be out here every single day with a hose going up and down each aisle. And with that, we'll catch you next time.